I think one of the biggest mistakes that the investors make is when they interact with the founders or the management team, they don't consider the vintage or the maturity of the the founders or the management team.
So, of course, there's so many pockets you can invest in. Which is the most exciting industry that you've come across?
If we invested in a great satellite company, can we help those companies move into different countries? But what if those countries actually have an issue with other Western countries? AI infrastructure comes up to mind as the most important. We also look at aerospace. So Rakuten has invested in AST Mobile, which is a giant fan-based satellite company that actually competes with Starlink. So if the company is doing very good, most likely it's a lagging indicator of the good choices that you made a year before. If the founders are fighting like cats and dogs, that is a leading indicator that something's going to happen very, very soon that's not very good.
What are the interesting AI innovations you've come across recently which blew your mind and you're like, wow, this is an interesting discovery?
What's more interesting and a lot of people are whispering about is actually how much these open source models from China are benefiting the closed source models in the US. The most important part of a SaaS company is the fact that you can retain users. But with LLMs, potentially, account migration and DB migration, database migration, becomes much more easier, and that is very scary.
That is exciting. Thank you so much for joining us here. For the benefit of the audience, could you please give us a round of introduction about yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Semin. I run Rakuten Capital International. We are the investing M&A and business development arm of Rakuten, the ex-Japan version of it. And we've been around for the past 15 years in Singapore.
Rich experience in investment, right? And there's so many people wanting and looking out to invest in companies like that. What are the key areas that they need to take care of before even starting to evaluate what they want to get into?
That's a really good question. I think in general, whether you're a commercial or a corporate investor, you really want to think about what your goal points are with the investments. A lot of times companies think about this as, oh, if we invest in the cool company, everything will work out and the company will go public and so on and so forth. I think you missed the mark because if you look at this as a corporate goal point, corporations want data, they want synergy, they want insights from a lot of the investments they make. And of course, commercial investors simply want to see where the company can exit to and provide a liquidity event. And that's a very big division. But it's really important, number one, that even if you're a corporate investor, for example, you provide the breadth and kind of experience that you have to the actual investments to guide them to an eventual exit or an eventual situation where your corporation can benefit from it. In many ways, it's a very interesting tightrope. A lot of investors don't have that down as of yet. But I think the more investors get interested in investing and interested in technology, I think the whole ecosystem will benefit.
Interesting. So, of course, there's so many pockets you can invest in. Which is the most exciting industry that you've come across?
Gotcha. I think, when you look at the major 4 or 5 investments that we're looking at for the next maybe 10 to 20 years, AI infrastructure comes up to mind as the most important. We also look at aerospace. So Rakuten has invested in AST Mobile, which is a giant fan-based satellite company that actually competes with Starlink. We also look at robotics. We also look at renewable energy because of data centers and AI. Energy is becoming such an important topic. Of course, computational biology, supported by AI, is also very important. So I think those 4 or 5 verticals are really important. Each topic is a microcosm on its own. And a lot of times it's very hard to touch or address properly because it's not only about economics, but it's also about geopolitics. So like a good example of this is if you want to invest in the best robotics company, you have to go to China, right? Because all of the ecosystems are integrated. They have the best servo motors. They have the best entrepreneurs. They have the best high nanometer semiconductors that they can get at low cost because they're sourcing it from the auto industry anyway. Now, how does a Japanese company who wants to actually have a hand in robotics invest in a Chinese company, right? There's a lot of complicated discussions about CFIUS and holdership that we have to work out, but we're still trying to figure out those Gordian knots. This is going back to aerospace, right? If we invested in a great satellite company, can we help those companies move into different countries? But what if those countries actually have an issue with other Western countries? So with these larger impact investments that we know will be important commercially in the future, we have to think 3 or 4 times. Understand will like basically get a conflict or a tension with a specific situation where the company might lose a business because of these geopolitical discussion points, but we always have to be prepared to help the company solve through them.
Wow, that's interesting. So great to know about the portfolio that you're looking at. So where does fintech fit in? Like, is it in the arena where you're looking? Because AI is something you mentioned first, and fintech has been leading also with the AI innovations.
Sure. Rakuten Capital traditionally has invested a lot in fintech. We had a separate fintech fund that invested in everything from Upstart that went public. It's a very prolific AI-based lender in the US. We have WePay, which was acquired by JP Morgan. We have Currency Cloud. We have Acorn. All these guys which have used AI to a certain extent. I think now where you're looking at more programmatic procedural transactions coming to ground. Stripe literally just announced about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, they built an LLM to actually help facilitate transactions more intelligently and find fraud, right? So they're embodying AI into financial transactions. I think those will become much more prevalent and much more open source as we move into kind of things like the stablecoin arena, right? Stablecoin is so important not only for the retail investor, but for actually governments. Governments are actively trying to launch stablecoins specifically because for a lot of times they want to stabilize the treasury market because they want the stablecoin linked to treasuries. So I think there's a lot of confluence that could be very productive for not only the retail investor, but also the governments.
Wow. And one interesting thing to know, what is the biggest mistake people make or organizations who are looking for investment make while they're trying to evaluate what kind of companies do they want to invest in?
Let's see. I mean, I would say every single investor makes a mistake every day.
Okay.
One mistake, right?
That's honest.
Whether it's, trying to advise the company in the right direction, or whether you're voting for a specific motion that the company wants, and so on and so forth. I think one of the biggest mistakes that the investors make is when they interact with the founders or the management team,
right,
they don't consider the vintage or the maturity of the the founders or the management team.
What do you mean by vintage?
Indeed. So when you work with a Series A company, how you interact with the founder and management team should be completely different when you're investing in a Series DE company, right? It's just because I'm leading the D round, I get to say what I want. It's not really like that because at that point, the company is maturized. Most likely they're bringing in very, very seasoned chairmen and CEOs that could actually run the business mechanistically. So I think that maturity level of interaction, I see surprisingly is not there a lot of times when I interact with GPs.
Okay. Oh, again, talking about interesting investments that you've done, anything which you thought might work and it didn't, and why?
See, I can't name the company specifically,
of course, no.
but
Yeah.
we had a company that was investing in that was building a business in the ad tech ecosystem, advertising, advertising technology ecosystem. And one of the things that we realized was this company was on a complete hockey stick in terms of how they were growing, because of course mobile advertising was so important. What I didn't realize is, this is the thing. I realized that the founders were not getting along. They were fighting like cats and dogs. But because I was a relatively young investor, and I was just looking at the business metrics going up, improving drastically, I thought, hey, if the money is good, the business is good. This was probably the biggest mistake that I made in my whole investment career, because you want to look at everything in heuristics. Everything in heuristics, as in, by your experience, what's happening right now is either a lagging or a leading indicator. So if the company is doing very good, most likely it's a lagging indicator of the good choices that you made a year before. If the founders are fighting like cats and dogs, that is a leading indicator that something's going to happen very, very soon that's not very good. So understanding that balance and having the humility to say, Semin, I know you're happy, but let's go and try to handle this issue, because whether you like it or not, founder dynamics is a critical part of the startup success. So those aspect ratios, I think I didn't do a good job on. And, lo and behold, the leading indicator became reality. The company did not do well. The company's revenue went drastically down because while they were fighting, they were not developing their technology, right? Because when they were earning a lot of money, they were actually living off of the technology that they built up before. which was giving them success. And now that they were fighting, they had no ability to plan for the future. So once that decrease in traction and revenue hit, it accelerated. So it was a 20-ish million dollar mistake that I made. And I hope that, the founders that have moved on to some really amazing things.
Right.
But it was a very big life lesson for me.
Wow. Okay. That's very nice of you to share it, because everybody says about success stories. They mention about how they have had successful investment in multiple firms, but we don't actually get to hear stories like the one that you've just shared. So it's very nice.
No, I have many more train wreck stories.
Oh.
But again, these things are really, it's not a badge of honor, but it definitely is really important to the fabric of an investor. If you don't have the battle scars, you don't understand the importance, right? And importance is important because it gives you an ability to endow yourself and your team and your investments with urgency. If you don't have that experience, just say, yeah, this is important, nobody's going to really listen to you. So that endowment of urgency or that endowment of importance comes from that experience. And I think because of the battle scars, I'm able to actually help companies understand and empathize with where they're at and where they can go.
Wow. So moving on to AI, the first in your list, what are the interesting AI innovations you've come across recently which blew your mind and you're like, wow, this is an interesting discovery?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone will be talking about how much the Chinese open source models have completely dominated the ecosystem of AI LLMs. What's more interesting, and a lot of people are whispering about, is actually how much these open source models from China are benefiting the closed source models in the US. I'm quite sure that they're actually utilizing these open source models to further train their closed source products that we use and pay for. This is a very, very specific thing that's happening right now, right? Of course, we can't name names, but when we think about all the things that actually these open source models have done for us, we are living in the golden age, right? And these realities are true at the same time. On one end, you have massively funded closed source companies that we speak of that are very successful, have massive number of users. And then on the other end, you have massively underfunded, but very creative, very brilliant founders in China developing models that are parity in performance to the closed source models. In all situations, these two things cannot be real at the same time, but yet it is. So we're living in a golden age where indeed technological innovation can overcome just raw liquidity and raw funding. So I think that's really great in many ways. I think what you're going to see in the future is just because of how easily people can actually get in touch with open source models and utilize them, you're going to see much more strength going into orchestration. How do I actually put one open source model and this open source model together to actually build my version of a perfect AI, right? So orchestration is going to be very important in the longer term. In the midterm, you're going to see techniques like reinforcement learning, human in the loop becoming very important. So reinforcement learning, but very stenciled for very specific expertises. It's going to be a whole software experience. How do I get a doctor LLM, a healthcare LLM, very good contemporary knowledge in regards to a specific type of cancer? Right now, you can read all the actual journals, but those journals are most likely at minimum 6 to 9 months old in their vintage. So you build software that allows you to check with the best person in the industry, but you make that a very native and a very cohesive experience, where it could be a simple thing as the LLM pushing a WhatsApp message to that doctor, asking questions and getting those answers, and those answers being inputted and regressed back into the LLM that we spoke of, right? So very good user experience, reinforcement learning software will become very important in the future. I think the third thing here is a lot of people are now going to start to realize, especially the enterprises, they've spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars on a LLM. And they're like, yes, I'm using whatever LLM and that's supported by Llama 3.5. But now you see that Kimi K2 or Minimax or any of the open source models, they're much better. So the CEO goes, okay, from Llama 3.5, I want you to move to Kimi K2. And the engineer's like, great. And then the CEO's like, how do you do that? there is actually no real product or industry as of now that helps you transfer all your weights and biases and knowledge and learnings and trainings from one model to the new model.
There's nothing like that? No bridge?
There's nothing. There's only very specific experts and system integrators that potentially try to do this and do the best they can. But there is no templatized business that goes after this. So that transferal business will be very, very important. So maybe I think those 2 or 3 industries, I think I'll be watching very closely.
I have personally not heard about something like that. So I'm sure it's a very big opportunity for people to, think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example, right? This transferal topic, migration topic is going to be very important for AI. Maybe you know a company that uses Salesforce.
Yes.
Now, one day they want to change to HubSpot or Zoho. How do you do that? Normally, it used to be like a 2-month period of DB transfers and individual account transfers. Now with the LLMs, you could transfer each of these people by having one agent matched to one user and transfer that for you, right? It's very programmatically.
Wow. And once you do it, you can just transfer it to any other software very easily.
The most important part of a SaaS company is the fact that you can retain users. But with LLMs, potentially, account migration and DB migration, database migration, becomes much more easier. And that is very scary to think about.
Why is it scary? I mean...
No, because for companies, right?
For companies, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for Salesforce and for HubSpot, this becomes a very scary proposition.
Yeah. But good for users.
Good for users, 100%.
Yes.
So I think this is where also, going back to the statement that I said before, valuations become very opaque. How do I value a SaaS company now that I know that there is going to be tools created that allows me to jump from one service to another with zero opportunity costs? So instead of applying a 7x multiple, maybe apply a 3x multiple, right? Because I think the risk justifies half the valuation cut, right? So those transferals, migration topics will be very, very important for AI and AI infrastructure.
Wow. Okay. And now talking about fintech arena, is there any good ideas that you have come across in the recent time where you think it's a very big opportunity for anybody to play in?
100%. I revert back to my original statement about stablecoin. It is going to be such an important industry because not only are the actual enterprises and users, the retail users, committed, but now you have sovereigns, governments that actually want this to happen, right? There's a reason why the US is trying to pass a Genius Act, because every one of those stable coins will be backed by a combination of the short and long end of the US Treasury yield curve. So now you're stabilizing the US economy by consuming stable coins, right? So 100% stable coins will become a very important part of this whole process. And going back to the Stripe comment, programmatized, very intelligent payment gateways that allow you to actually discern fraud at a very high level, but at a very low cost. Those would be very, very important to look at, right? So you put those two together, you have a massive amount of disintermediation that happens, right? So the original payment gateways that we speak of today that are very much in repute and very giant, those companies might have to think about their business model drastically differently, maybe in the next 3 or 4 years.
Well, as a consumer, I think this is one of the areas which is a pain point for me as well, where if I'm paying to someone in Kenya using M-Pesa versus in India using Paytm or PayU, there's no talking happening between these two apps. There's no bridge between these two apps which can easily help me transfer some of the payments in Kenya, because as a traveler, I would want that ease. Is this a lucrative area for you, or is it not?
I think, again, this is going back to the whole stablecoin discussion point, right? So I think 100% facilitating cross-border payment will be so important. Think about the migrant remittance business, right? It's a massive business. I believe one of the largest remittance corridors is actually Philippines to the US and US to the Philippines, right?
Wow.
So I think it's in the ranges of like 5 to 10 billion, 20 billion US dollars a year that is remitted, right?
That's huge.
People in diaspora in the in the US earn US dollars and then send it back to the Philippines, right? It's a massive business. And so is a lot of the migratory remittance corridors. So I think stablecoin is really supportive of that.
Okay. So it's going to replace currencies which are playing a part now and probably have a unified token.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think first it's a supplementation discussion. Can this supplement transfer, right? So for people who are massively digitally native, can this supplement and save costs for me as a digital native? Then it moves down into the layer of people who are less digital native, but still want the cost savings. And then so on and so forth. I think it's going to be a slow penetration.
Got that. To the parting thoughts, any one line for investors to think about in the current exciting phase that they are in?
Sure. I would say, there's a term called social proofing, right? Just because everyone's doing it, it seems okay, right? That's social proofing.
Yeah.
I want to say social proofing is not proof of sanity, right? Just because everyone's doing it, everybody thinks this is okay. You are in a golden age where with a LLM, whether it's Gemini or whatnot, you can actually fact check and look at what's happening in the ecosystem and ask very complex questions that get really good answers. So I would say put more effort into building out the right questions you want to ask yourself and building your business or thinking about your business and really scrutinize yourself. And it's in many ways a hyper-Socratic method, right? Of how you want to build a business and actually succeed in your business. But I think that would be a very key area of success in the future.